The Healing Through Love podcast with Sharlene Lynch and Rose Davidson. Trauma is a gateway, a motivator. Our guest, Marcia Martin, in episode 26, discusses overcoming trauma through self-love.
So this child without a mentor would say, oh, I made them angry. I must be bad. There must be something wrong with me. I have to be better. I have to try harder. And the child may try also to draw that anger into themselves, believing that that's going to somehow solve the problem. Now, the reason that doesn't solve the problem is because Sally didn't generate the anger. And until the adults that did generate it, or other children, until the people who did generate it actually deal with it, they'll just make more because they are in the vibrational state of anger. So, Sally.
The Healing Through Love podcast with Sharlene Lynch and Rose Davidson. The Healing Through Love podcast with host Sharlene Lynch and Rose Davidson would love to acknowledge Global Glamping Charities Incorporated for generously supporting this podcast. Global Glamping Charities, solving homelessness in all of its forms. Reach out to them at globalglamping.org.
Welcome to another episode of Healing Through Love. Each week, we share ideas, experiences, and resources to increase the awareness of domestic and family violence and to empower survivors to grow and thrive. We talk with experts who share their advice, or with people who have experienced abuse, no matter where they are on their journey. This is all about healing through love. And now, here are your hosts, Sharlene Lynch and Rose Davidson.
Hello and welcome to the Healing Through Love podcast. I'm your host today, Sharlene Lynch from sharlenelynch.com. Healing Through Love is a social enterprise whose vision is to shift awareness on domestic and family violence within the community and to support the survivors wherever they are on their journey of healing. Our mission is to provide family and domestic violence survivors with a soft place to land by offering advice and services available to them and their families. We interview experts and survivors to share their personal stories and advice for those who've experienced abuse, no matter where they are on the journey. And we are supported by Global Glamping Charities. This is an amazing organization whose number one efforts are as their primary purpose is to solve homelessness in all of its forms. And you'll hear from our sponsors later on today. But today I'd love to introduce our beautiful guest, Dr. Marcia Martin. She's a heart healer. She's a spiritually empowerment counselor, minister, best-selling author, public speaker, and clairaudient angel communicator, specializing in helping people heal their relationships with themselves. There is so much to unpack here. I'm looking forward to it, and we've got so much to offer today. Hello and welcome, Marcia.
Thanks so much for having me here. I'm delighted to be able to share with you, and I love what you are doing.
Thank you. I'd love to, if you don't mind, share a little bit of the story of how did you get to where you are right now?
Not quickly. not with ease and grace. Backwards, screaming and dragging my heels and believing that I had made a mistake all the way until the end, and then recognizing it was the most perfect journey possible. So I think that's what I want everyone to know, no matter where you are, whether you are in the midst of an abusive relationship or you haven't even recognized, hey, this relationship is abusive, or have gotten to the place where you're able to begin healing from all that you have experienced. you're at the perfect place. You're doing it in the perfect way. And there is only greatness to be gained from it. So I think the most important thing that I learned as I went kicking and screaming through what I thought was hell is that the thing that I should have let go of earlier was the shame. I needed to let go of feeling foolish, feeling stupid, feeling embarrassed, and just have learned to love myself and just say, okay, this is where we are. And let's find the good within this place that we are and blossom from there. Instead, I spent years in self-condemnation, and those are years that delayed my forward progress. So I don't want anyone to have to go on a journey that took as long as mine. So I'm happy to share. Let go of the self-criticism, the blaming, the shaming, the feeling that you've gotten it wrong, and recognize that no matter where you are, there is some vital element of truth and right that you need to focus upon and just make that the center of your attention.
I hear you. Yes, and it seems like these low frequencies are a self-fulfilling prophecy. So as soon as we sort of say, okay, that's not mine, yes, and then something else comes up to re-fulfill the prophecy, and we seem to be caught in this spiral. So we need some type of pattern interrupt. I'd be absolutely curious to find out what do you share as pattern interrupts to help us move away from these thought processes?
You know, that is so brilliant because, yes, we're all creatures of habit, and we've all been trained to kind of stay in the no change zone as much as we might tell ourselves, oh, I love adventure. We all really get into our routines, whatever they are, and may not even come up for air to recognize when this particular routine is particularly abusive or uncaring or unloving. And so I always suggest that people check in with their heart. And it's obviously much easier when your heart has been cleared of the trauma and the pain, because certainly when I started, I was like, I'm not listening to my heart. My heart led me into some crazy, awful circumstances. So if your heart feels as though it's filled with confusion, then go to your gut. If you're feeling that it's not an opportunity to say, oh, that doesn't matter. That is your antenna, your divine antenna going up and saying, you really need to check what you're doing. This is really a time to take a breath, take that moment and ask yourself, is this for my highest good? And if you can't take a breath after you ask yourself that question, then it's time to change course. And actually, it doesn't matter what direction you go. It's just good to pick a direction because you will be corrected along the way. So rather than just, oh, I can only go straight, if straight means falling off the cliff, turning right or left is preferable to falling off the cliff. And just recognize that no matter which direction you go, you will be corrected along the way when you are listening for that guidance. And it is always coming. It's just that we ignore it. So the gut is such a good, loud kind of foghorn for us to follow. The heart can be a little more difficult, especially if it hasn't had an opportunity to heal. The heart is the purest, but I think the gut is the loudest. So start with the gut.
I love it. So for our listeners today, if you haven't had the opportunity to sit and listen to your gut or your heart, So how would we start this journey if this is new to you, if this entire language is new to you? How would you suggest, Dr. Martin, how would you suggest that we begin the journey?
I think the most important thing you can do is teach yourself to take a moment, take a couple of breaths. So somebody says to you, oh, let's go do something. And this is a person that in the past has not always led you in the right direction, but for whatever reason, you are really attached to that person, and it's automatic for you to say yes to whatever they offer, even though it has consequences that come down the line. So I would just say, if they say to you, hey, how about going out tonight and I don't know, we'll go hit up a couple of bars. And this is really not, in your highest good, but you feel conditioned to say yes, or you're not really good at saying no. Take a couple of breaths. Just give yourself the pause. Just take a moment. When you don't answer right away, the person may give you the out. They may say, oh, it doesn't sound like you're really interested. Or, you know what? I changed my mind. The other person doesn't want to feel like you don't want to go with them. So they are more likely to step in that gap for you and say, you know what? I don't think it's a great idea, or something like that, because they don't want to be rejected. So when you just take a moment, you're just not being rude. You're just taking a breath. Gosh. And then you just, you can respond with something like, oh gosh, and then give yourself a couple of breaths just to process. You're not being cruel. You're not being demeaning. You're just taking a minute. And then while you're taking that minute, you check in with your gut. Is it safe for me to go with Sally? And you do that, ask yourself that mentally. Is it safe for me to go with Sally? If your gut is like, then allow yourself to say, gosh, it sounds lovely, but I already have plans. And I need to make sure, especially for empathic people who are highly sensitive beings, we love to please. So I always teach all of my empathic beings that I do not consider it lying when you go into every situation with some pre-packaged excuses for how you're going to get out of a situation that otherwise would bring you great difficulty. That is you just honoring the person and recognizing they may not be at the level where you are. They may still think it's fun to put themselves in danger, or they don't care enough about themselves to care whether they are putting themselves in danger. So if you have a kind way of getting out of the situation, you're letting them save face and you are keeping yourself safe. So I always have a couple of things that I use as my stock answer if I know it's something that is making me feel uncomfortable. And it usually starts with, gosh, I would love to, but, and then I usually say I've made plans with someone else. But I generally like to acknowledge the other person as opposed to saying something like, are you kidding? What a stupid idea. That is so cruel, and it's so unlikely that the empath is going to get that out of their mouth. They're usually going to say, I guess so. And it's just so much more powerful to say, oh, that sounds lovely, but I've already made plans. And now both parties save face. And it does give the other person, who we're calling Sally, an opportunity to think, well, maybe this isn't my best idea either. So when you Well, I think it's modeling. And when we practice self-love, we can model it for others, even those who are not good at being self-loving might find it possible to take a breath too and ask themselves, is it really a good idea to go out to bars tonight?
I love that, Dr. Martin. I wonder, you mentioned empaths, and I wonder, what's your thoughts on people who are survivors, either still in the process or out of the process? Where does empathy rate in their strengths? Do the most part, are they empathetic, or is that one of their strengths? Is there a correlation between empaths and people who have been victims or are survivors?
My research shows it's almost 100% correlation. And the reason for that is the empath, especially when you begin life, unless you have a mentor, a grandmother, or some older figure, parent, some authority figure somewhere who understands what it is like to enter the world as a deeply sensitive person and still maintain a state of empowerment. If you don't have that as a role model, then you are lost in space and you're going to begin life as a sponge because you believe that you are the one causing the other people the difficulty. And I'll give you an example of that. So let's use Sally again, but we'll change and give her and make her have a better time. So Sally is empathic, and she walks into the room where there are other people who are angry. Now, Sally doesn't know that the people are angry before she gets there. All she knows, especially as a young child, is when she walked into the room, she felt great anger. Now, as a child, you usually assume that you are responsible for the reaction that the people are having to you. So this child without a mentor would say, oh, I made them angry. I must be bad. There must be something wrong with me. I have to be better. I have to try harder. And the child may try also to draw that anger into themselves, believing that that's going to somehow solve the problem. Now, the reason that doesn't solve the problem is because Sally didn't generate the anger. And until the adults that did generate it, or other children, until the people who did generate it actually deal with it, they'll just make more because they are in the vibrational state of anger. So Sally believes she's doing this wonderful thing and siphons off all of this anger that she can't deal with because it doesn't belong to her. So she may put it aside in her energetic body and just pretend that it's not causing her a problem. And then she'll think, oh gosh, but they're still angry. Oh, I guess I'm not good enough at this. And so we start this downward spiral of, I make people angry and I wasn't successful at making them happy. Oh, now I'm not good enough. Oh, I have very little value. And unless you are in a home where people are telling you how wonderful you are and how precious you are and what a gift you are believing that you are all these things that you are telling yourself. And certainly because you can feel the emotions of the other people, and their emotions are on the negative side of the scale, you believe everything you're telling yourself, because every time you walk in the room, there's anger or hurt or jealousy or resentment, and you think you're the cause. So now you become an adult and you are carrying this heavy burden of shame and guilt, and you're always looking to relieve it by being good and making other people happy. And so it's very likely that you're going to attract an abusive relationship because you will put up with Sally. You're such a whatever demeaning statement they want to say. And you'll think, well, yeah, that's probably true. Oh, I'll have to try harder. And so you will put yourself forward again and again in the abusive relationship, believing that if you're just better, they will be able to behave normally, not understanding that this is their own problem. You have problems, but that's not them. That's not what this is. And you cannot solve your problem by taking on theirs, and you can't solve theirs by taking on theirs. So it just becomes enabling the abuser, demeaning yourself, and you end up staying and staying and staying long past your sell-by date, and until it really erupts into all sorts of unpleasant situations.
Okay, so frequency, is this something that we need to be having conversations about at school? Power versus force, should it be like a book that we cover off in preschool?
Oh my gosh, yes. And if we allowed our children to understand the gift of being an empathetic being, that empathy, in my opinion, being an empath, being able to feel the feelings of others in the room, is a superpower. But if you don't understand how to use it, you're the sponge, and sponges quickly become filled and then heavy. So we need to, as empathic beings, instead of taking energy in, share our love out. And we have no control over what other people absorb, but we can certainly be the radiator in the room that keeps warming up the room with love, with joy, with peace. We can keep raising the vibration. And some people in the room will get it, and they will raise too. And then there'll be even more. But there will be people, no matter what you do, who aren't ready to go there, and that's okay.
This is so true. If I think about just empathy as a skill set, even politicians, salespeople, clairvoyants, people who are counselors, like there isn't a teacher, a nurse, a doctor, we can only hope, that this is a skill set that would be really amazing for people who are in the healing space, in the educational space. It would be great if we could see empathy as a sought after skill set, rather than what I can see from mostly it's not. And if we can change the way people see that, it would really make an impact on the planet.
Well, I mean, let's look at that. Consider how powerful you are as an empathic being, being able to go into a room and read what each person needs to hear from you in order to feel better. You can provide that. You cannot guarantee that they are going to accept it, but you can feel good about the fact that, gosh, Sally is having a really bad day. She needs to hear a kind thing, or she needs to hear something about herself that will make her feel good about herself. You can offer that. You have no control over whether she receives it, but you can at least offer it. And then I've done something of great value today. And there's just nothing that replaces being able to offer value wherever you go.
I love that, Dr. Martin. So our listeners today, there is a really good chance that empathy is one of your higher strengths. So listening to Dr. Martin, you can hear how you can shift the way you perceive this strength, not as a weakness, but as a strength in itself, and learn to share love out. And it's up to them whether or not they receive it. Your job is to do the sharing of the love out. I love it. This is great. Now, what about protection? So people who are a little bit more empathetic, and what are the things that we could do on a daily basis, even just going to the shopping centre or going to places where there's going to be lots of people? What can we do to protect ourselves energetically so that we can maintain our own frequency and we're not affected by what's happening around us?
And again, such an important thing to remember. First of all, you don't go in wide open. Don't try to read everybody in the mall. That's not your job. Let's get clear. There is a time and a place for you to really be open to what people are experiencing. And if it's not the time, if you're just there because you want to go get a new outfit and you really just need to hold your energy to yourself, then do so. But please make sure that before you leave your house, you have pulled around you a beautiful, I call them blankets of pink and gold light. And to me, that is just unconditional love and acceptance. So you go out shielded in this blanket of pink and gold light, and you can wrap others in these blankets. And that is one of the ways that we can be very proactive, because the other thing that I think empaths struggle with is that we love to be helpful. So we get offering to do more than we should because we enjoy being helpful. So let's say you are out in a crowd and you just can't turn off the noise that is coming from one particular direction. Somebody is really needing help. You don't need to go over there and say, oh, excuse me, I just feel like you're really having a bad day, and then waste your time out listening to their sob story. Instead, you can, without ever engaging with them personally, wrap them in a blanket of pink and gold light and go know that you gave them the highest vibration possible, because that is the light of the Christ consciousness. So you're sharing the most magnificent energy that you can, and yet you've never had to engage with them personally. Now, if you want to go engage with them, absolutely. But it's a way for you to keep your anonymity, to keep your vibration close to you so that you are safe within your blanket, and yet share out so that you also are recognizing, okay, I'm helping. So let's say you are in a grocery store and there's a mother with a toddler who is really not wanting to be at the grocery store. Well, we've all experienced that. As if you're a mother, I guarantee you've been there once at least. And if you're a shopper, you've probably been there when that's been happening. But you can get really angry and say, oh, that child ruined my day. Or you can wrap mom and child in a blanket of pink and gold light. And if you have time, maybe you can offer to maybe you can try to go up and distract the child to give mom a minute to catch her breath. But if not, then you've done something fabulous by offering that blanket of pink and gold light. But really, the most important thing to remember is not to go out into public wide open. It's just too difficult. And if you hold that image in your mind of a sponge that's soaking in water, that's you. And that sponge is going to sink. So instead of being a sponge, be a radiator that generates love. Throw out blankets of pink and gold light, but don't put yourself in danger.
It is so important for us to protect ourselves, protect our frequency, and know what is ours to deal with and what we can just hold our own frequency and shine a light. So, if you take a light to a dark room, it lights up the room, and just be that shining light to help them move forward, even without saying anything. Just energetically hold that space for them. I love it, Dr. Martin. I think I could talk to you all day. Now you've
but you made such an important point, which is, if your light is dull because you've absorbed all of the energy around you, then you're out of commission. And that is really, if there is any kind of sin that I will get behind, that I consider sinful. Everything else, It's fine. Everything else is just part of the journey. But when you allow your light to dim because you've been minding other people's business, now that's not okay. Be you, be the beautiful beacon of light and love in the room. Be your powerful empathic self and allow others to come up to you. Don't try to go down to them and think that somehow you're going to figure out how to turn your light on when you're in the well. It just doesn't happen that way.
This is true, Dr. Martin. And for those who are listening today and you run your own businesses, even if you're a healer or anything else in between, what she's speaking about is not just from a personal perspective, but also from a business perspective as well. Instead of us going to the level of the customer, if we're shining the light of what is possible, then and putting out content and letting people know this is what's possible, they'll be drawn to that, just like they're drawn to the light, rather than you having these low frequency conversations with customers. So all of this is true, yes, and there's more. Now, Dr. Martin, you've got an ebook, is that right? That's available today for our listeners. Can you tell us a little bit about the ebook?
Absolutely. The angels, all the beings of the energetic realm are my absolute best friends who I rely on continuously. So this ebook is 11 ways in which we are resisting them, because too often, at least I know in my journey, I thought I was just being so great at being open and receptive, only to find, gosh, I'm not getting the answer, or I'm not able to hear them right now, or it feels like I hit a brick wall. And so these are 11 different ways in which we could be stopping that communication without realizing it. And then, of course, what you can do instead. Because when you have the angels as your helpers, life becomes absolutely magical. There's no more, I hope so. There's just, oh, everything's always working out for my highest good. Even if you are in the middle of a disaster of your own making, you'll be able to remember, okay, this is just a little drop in the bucket. Everything always works out for my highest good, and you'll move through it more quickly.
I love it.
So just no reason to do it by ourselves when we have all this fabulous assistance.
It's fantastic. And this is available to our listeners today for free. The link's going to be in the show notes and also in the description. And that's exciting. So thank you so much for that. And I also understand that you've got a beautiful community. Can you tell us, Dr. Martin, a little bit about the community?
Oh, yes. The angels named it My Heart's Desire. And the reason they call it that is because that is what they want for you more than anything. And I kind of feel like God has gotten a bad rap along the way, because I certainly grew up in a household that said, well, God doesn't want you to have these things, or, God's not interested in that. And the opposite is true. God wants to give you the desires of your heart. But in order for you to receive, you must be in alignment with the energy that is capable of providing that for you. So because we live in a physical world in physical bodies, it's easy for us to get out of alignment. We have so much stimulation. We have so many different things going on, so many different ways that we get distracted, and we have this ego that we're learning how to navigate, and we're on these journeys toward enlightenment that sometimes it seems so close and other days it seems so far. And so God, who is the greatest giver possible and who only gives good gifts, has also put together all of these incredible tools that help us navigate our daily lives. So it is spiritually based, practical solutions. And I'll give you an example of one, which is, when you have those repeating sort of obtrusive thoughts, I call it, being the hamster on a wheel. You're just like, oh, can't get out of that rut. You know, you are bringing to yourself through law of attraction the worst result you could possibly imagine. But no matter how hard you try, you are still finding yourself running on the hamster wheel, repeating the same thought. So I went to the angels with that and said, oh, we got to do something about this. Something has to be able to break through that repetitive thought. And of course, they came up with a brilliant way that has action to it, which helps me personally. And it's just a way to give it to God. Well, we all know we're supposed to give it to God, but having a little way to do it for me made it like, oh, no, I can't think that again. I gave that one to God. No, sorry, you're shut off. And just having that little moment to reset lets me remember, oh, I get to choose my thoughts. You're not in charge, thoughts. I'm in charge. Remember, we're not doing that anymore. That's gone. Back here. I want my highest good, not the garbage can. So it's little ways like that to keep us on track without using blame, shame, self-condemnation, self-hatred, all of those horrible tools that I used previously.
I love it. I love it. Now, the details to join the community or inquire about the community, we'll put those in the show notes as well in the description, if that's okay, Dr. Martin.
Absolutely. Love it.
I love it. We have been chatting for more than a half an hour and it just feels like 5 minutes. I think
it certainly does. You know, and I have to share something because I know that some of your listeners are healers. This is a wonderful story. Jesus is not religious to me, but the greatest healer, the greatest example of alignment that I can ever imagine. And so he is my helper in the heart space. And so, as you know, we grow as we help others. And so I'm stepping out of my comfort zone, which was friends and coworkers and, you know, people that I knew, you know, into this place where, okay, I'm really going to step out now and begin helping people that I've never met before. And this first couple of people were not even in my town, so it had to be via phone. And this is long before the Zoom days. So it was just by telephone. And I said to Jesus before the call, okay, I'm really scared. I don't want to say anything wrong. I'm really anxious. This is huge. I know how much value this work gave to me, but I don't know these people, and I really need you to be here with me and make sure that I don't screw it up. So, first of all, talk about negative and no self-confidence. That's okay, though. But Jesus was loving and kind and just kind of smiled and, okay. So, little did I know what a jokester he is and how he would use humor to allow me to relax so I could raise my vibration and really offer the most impactful work possible. So when we work in heart healing, we go into the energetic heart space to clear away the trauma. And I said to the person that's on the phone, all right, now I'm going to take you into the heart. I'm saying to Jesus, okay, come on now. This is where I really need you. This is where you shine. And so Jesus suddenly appears larger than life and he starts doing things. I'm like, it's kind of weird. And it's like plucking out his eye. And I'm like, and he's sawing off his arm and then his leg. And I'm like, meanwhile, I'm saying, Jesus, you were supposed to help me. What are you doing? I can't understand. Am I getting it all wrong? Of course, the very self-deprecating person that I was at that time, immediately go to, am I doing it wrong? And he's just laughing and laughing. And I finally have to say to the person on the other end, I'm sorry, I need just a moment. My helper is here, but I'm having difficulty understanding what they're asking me to do. So just give me a moment. Like, Jesus, what's going on? This is crazy. And he said, oh, I just want to remind you, ask them to join you in the high place. I'm like, what? He said, well, when I went to heal the blind man, I didn't pluck out one of my eyes and say, oh, here you go, goody, now we each have one. I brought them up to the high place where healing could occur. I invited them up to the place where they could see themselves as perfect. And that's where healing happens. And then he said, with the withered arm and the leg, and he just kept reminding me that when we work in the healing profession, if you have a client that is the drowning man in the sea, and you start swimming out, believing that you're going to rescue them, you now become two drowning men in the sea. Mm-hmm. And so, of course, he shows me the person drowning, and I'm immediately in the water swimming, and he's in his rowboat. I'm like, uh-oh, you're rowing and I'm swimming. What's wrong with this picture? And he said, take the boat. Take the boat. Don't ever put yourself in a position of danger to help another person, because then you're both going down. Take the boat, offer them to get into the boat, and if they won't, you simply row back to shore and trust that God will send another person when they're ready.
Oh, I love it, Dr. Martin. It's been a fabulous 40 minutes with you today. I could listen to you all day. It's such a joy. Now, we're going to put all of the links to the community and also to the ebook. And that's a goodbye from us from Healing Through Love. Did you have some final words, Dr. Martin?
Just take the boat. Love yourself enough that you put yourself first, because then you will be available to help so many more people.
I love it. Put your oxygen mask on first. I love it.
Yes.
Take care. It's a bye from us from Healing Through Love. Until next week. Bye from now.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Healing Through Love. You can get further resources, see the show notes, or simply reach out to us via our website at htlaustralia.org. Thanks so much for joining us, and we look forward to your company next time on the Healing Through Love podcast.